My name is Ariel Davenport, and I learned a long time ago that some people will love you in their words, but never in their actions. It happened on a late summer afternoon in New Orleans, the kind of heat that presses into your bones and tells you to slow down, breathe soft, and mind your heart. The air smelled like magnolia, river water, and money, at least on my sister's side of town. The St. Augustine Hotel sat like something out of a postcard. High ceilings, marble floors, chandeliers that dripped crystal like rain caught in time. The kind of place where the carpet was so plush people walked different, like the floor was watching. And it was my sister Vanessa's wedding day. She was the golden one, the loved one, the daughter who sparkled when she walked into a room, even if she never earned the shine. I don't say that with jealousy. I say it the way you say the color of the sky. It was just truth. Me. I was the one people described as strong. Strong enough to be counted on. Strong enough to do without. Strong enough to love quietly. Strong is just another word for invisible when you really listen. I walked in alone. No plus one. No audience. Just a small wrapped box in my hands and the soft rustle of my navy blue dress brushing against my knees. I could hear the music already, a brass band warming up, the kind that could make you dance even if you never meant to. I smiled. I really did. I was happy for her, or at least I wanted to be. My mama met me in the lobby. She wore a gold dress that shimmered like afternoon light on the river. She didn't hug me. She just touched my elbow, brief, formal, the kind of touch people give when others are watching. "You made it," she said, like she wasn't sure I would. I said I would, I answered. Her smile flickered, then faded, like a flame in bad wind. "We just need you to be agreeable today." Agreeable. Like I was a complication. That was the first sting. The second came minutes later. The young woman with the headset, the wedding coordinator, scanned her list, eyes moving like someone searching for a typo. "Oh," she said softly. The kind of "oh" people say when something feels wrong, but they're not paid enough to fix it. "Yes, you're seated in the back terrace area." She pointed. Not inside the ballroom. Not even near the music. Outside, where the doors swung open every few minutes as the servers came through, pushing carts of glassware and trash bins full of melting ice. A back row behind the celebration. I stared at the chair, a single folding chair, set facing the ballroom through a glass partition. I could see everything, but I was not a part of it. And that's when Vanessa appeared. Laughing, hair pinned up in curls, lace veil trailing like mist. She glanced my way and smiled the way someone might smile at a stranger who happened to hold the door for them. Light, polite, empty. She leaned in, her voice honey-sweet, poison-slow. "They didn't know where to put you." Like I was the problem. Like I didn't belong to my own blood. She touched my arm, the way you touch a countertop to see if it's clean. "You understand, right?" I did. Just not in the way she thought. Because in that moment, as the brass band began to play, as the ballroom doors opened wide, pulling everyone but me inside, something inside me stilled. Not sadness. Not anger. Clarity. I saw my entire life, all at once. My seat at the edge of family photos. My place in the background of memories. My role as the afterthought. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just sat, quiet, composed. And I watched my sister's perfect world sparkle under glass. If you had walked by at that moment, you might have thought I was calm. But ask any river. Still water can drown you just as deep as a storm. This was the moment I stopped trying to be seen. The moment I began planning my exit. And the moment my revenge began. Not loud. Not violent. Not dramatic. No. Precise. Patient. Inevitable. The kind that doesn't break a person. The kind that makes them see. A week after the wedding, New Orleans was back to its usual rhythm. Streetcars humming along St. Charles. Children racing through sprinklers. Neighbors arguing about gumbo recipes like it was federal policy. Life moves fast here, and grief moves slow. I went back to work at the Crawford Legal Clinic, a place where people come when they've run out of hope, money, or both. I wasn't a lawyer. I was the researcher, the one who dug into records, tracked down documents, connected timelines. The quiet work that makes justice possible, even if nobody claps for you. I used to like being behind the scenes. But after that wedding, after that chair by the trash door, silence didn't feel like peace anymore. Silence felt like erasure. Mrs. Jean, the receptionist, noticed before anyone else. "You walk in heavy today," she said, eyes soft behind her cat-eye glasses. I smiled a tired sort of smile. "Just tired." "Tired ain't got footsteps, baby," she said. "Pain does." She always had a way of saying truth around the edges of things. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, tried to drown myself in case notes. But every time I blinked, I saw that ballroom. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the chair outside the glass. It didn't hurt the way heartbreak hurts. It hurt the way memory hurts, like a bruise that never fades. That evening when I got home, there was a card slipped under my apartment door. White envelope, rose-colored ink, my sister's handwriting. I already knew what it was. I didn't open it. I didn't have to. She wanted to thank me for being so understanding. Understanding. That was the word our family worshipped. Understanding meant, sit quiet. Don't complain. Don't make other people uncomfortable with your pain. It meant, love us, even if we don't love you equally. I set the envelope on the counter and poured myself tea. Mint and honey, warm, steady. That's when my phone buzzed. It was my cousin, Camille. If Vanessa was the sun, bright, admired, proud, Camille was the moon. Quiet, observant, always watching more than she said. "You got a minute?" she asked. Her voice sounded heavy, like she was carrying something delicate. "Yeah," I said, "I got time." "You still working tomorrow?" "MHM. I'm coming by." She didn't ask. She declared. And that's how I knew something was wrong. Camille showed up with a brown tote bag and no makeup, which meant her guard was down. She sat across from me in a booth at Café Beignet, where the windows fog up from the heat of the kitchen and powdered sugar covers every surface like snowfall that never melts. She took a deep breath. "I was helping clean up after the wedding," she began. And my stomach tightened. "I heard something," she continued. She looked me right in the eyes. "Ari, your mother and Vanessa, they were talking about you. Not talking to me. Talking about me." "What did they say?" I asked. And Camille hesitated. That was worse than hearing anything. "They said," she whispered, "that you should be grateful they invited you at all. That the wedding was too elegant for you. That putting you in the terrace seat was polite." The words fell like glass on tile. Sharp. Small. Shattering. "And your mother," Camille's voice cracked. "She said maybe it was better you stayed in the background, because that's where you fit best." The world didn't stop, but something inside me did. Not anger. Not sadness. A closing. Like a door that had been left open too long. I stirred my coffee slowly, even though I didn't need to. The spoon clinked against the cup in a steady rhythm, something to hold on to. "Okay," I said. Just that. Camille waited for tears, for rage, for something explosive. But I was calm. River calm. Because now the picture was clear. They hadn't forgotten me. They had placed me. Deliberately. Carefully. With intention. They didn't treat me like I didn't matter. They treated me like I didn't exist. And that is where revenge grows best. Not in heat, but in the cool, quiet places where dignity rebuilds itself. Camille reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "What are you gonna do?" she whispered. I looked out the window, at the streetcars rolling slow and steady down the tracks. "I'm not going to fight them," I said softly. I saw her tense, confused. I smiled. "I'm going to let them see themselves. Because sometimes, the most powerful revenge is simply letting people feel the emptiness they created and letting them face it alone." I watched the chandelier shake through the glass for a long second before the scream cleaved the music in two. People froze the way dancers pause mid-step when a record skips. In that fractured silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, an old pulley releasing, a weight dropping from my chest. Inside, Leia's face collapsed into that new, exposed version of herself. The woman who had practiced being adored until she'd forgotten how to be honest. Around her, the room shifted. Guests opened their mouths and closed them again as if the air itself needed rethinking. I slid into my car like a ghost and backed out of the gravel lot before anyone could call my name. My phone was a furnace of missed calls and texts. My mother, fragile in words that tried to hide steel, "Please, Ariel, call me." My father, quieter, "Come home." Even Leia, "You ruined everything." 1,000 tiny knives. I didn't answer. Driving away, the lake swallowed the hotel like a secret place, and the road took my heartbeat with it. By the time the city lights stitched themselves into the horizon, the phone stopped being an enemy and became a silent witness. At my apartment, I peeled off the wine-colored dress and folded it like it had never been armor. I opened the small silver box and took out its contents again. The crystal frame, the printed messages, the little note I'd written and left folded like a hinge between truth and the world. Truth, I had learned, has a particular gravity. You don't shove it down people's throats and expect it to be swallowed. You let it land on the table, and you let the room breathe. Sometimes people choose to look away, sometimes they turn and see. The next morning, the feeds were frantic. Hashtags looped like fishing nets. Wedding drama, sibling shame, Leia exposed. Video clips of the moment had been captured by someone, probably the cousin who'd always had a phone in her hand, then uploaded and spooned around the net until it landed in every feed. I watched one shaky clip at 6 a.m. in my kitchen with my coffee gone cold. Leia's face, the way she clutched her bouquet like a shield. Noah's hand on the table, the annulment paper, my chest tightened and loosened all at once. The sound of glass shattering on the floor had already become a meme. People captioned it with one-liners about karma and brides and the wickedness of the polished. My inbox filled with messages I wasn't prepared to read. Old friends checking in. Exes who remembered me as the quiet sister reaching out. A direct message that gave me a beat of shiver. "You did it. Bravo." From a number I didn't recognize. For the first time in a long while, the smallest acknowledgments didn't sting. They warmed. The next week, the family house felt like a monument to memory and muteness. My mother called and cried for the first time that I could remember without tightening her voice into one of the old charms she used at parties. "We didn't know." It fell out of her like a truth she had practiced saying when cornered. "We thought she was stressed. We thought she was young." "Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady, sliding into the soft threshold between tender and measured. "You knew something. You made me keep quiet. You told me not to make noise. Do you know what it feels like to be the whisper in a room that everyone pretends not to hear?" Her silence answered me in the only honest way she could, by weeping. But reprieve wasn't remorse alone. Leia's father was tight with the press within 48 hours. He made a public statement, pained, dignified, but empty. "Family matters are private." He used those words with the same old index finger, proper, deflective. My mother posted a picture of flowers and the caption, "We are all learning." It was an owl-eyed apology without the eyes. That same week, Noah filed for annulment and then for quiet separation. His mother, Victoria, who had once looked at me the way winter looks at bare branches, called to say she was sorry in a voice that shivered with something like newly discovered shame. "Leia has always been ambitious," she said, as if ambitious could be pressed into a small box and returned to the shelf labeled excuse. The word slid like a splinter into my mouth. "Not at the cost of people," she added, and the line clicked. People want a villain, and the world supplies them. But I had no desire to be the villain in anyone's story. I wanted to be a woman who chose herself. The fallout, it turned out, had teeth. Leia's job started to wobble. The PR firm for Noah's company quietly distanced itself with the efficiency of people who know a scandal can tangle you. Sponsors whispered about optics. A charity withdrew an invitation. I watched her world recede like tidewater pulling out from a cliff, revealing the things she'd hoped would stay submerged. And there, in the center of all that unspooling, I found an unexpected thing. A softness in myself that maybe had always been there, but had been asleep. The ability to keep moving forward without needing anyone's permission. I spent mornings walking the river path, shoes clicking on wet pavement. Old women in knitted hats nodded greetings that felt like small benedictions. A man with a paint-splattered jacket sold croissants 3 stalls down. I bought one of everything like I was composing small feasts for my own soul. I took a writing class on Thursday nights in a church basement and discovered how satisfying it was to fold sentences into places where they could be seen. My mother called less and then more. Sometimes she cried. Sometimes she argued. Sometimes she told me stories about Leia when she was small, how she'd wear her father's boots and march around the yard declaring herself queen. Listening to those stories hurt in a new way. It was like holding 2 photographs of the same person with opposing captions. But even as the family redistributed their allegiances, Leia's response to everything became more public and more petulant. She took to social media with a vengeance, posting images of moving on and stronger than ever on a perfect grid of filtered brightness. She hired lawyers and wrote admonishing letters full of the formal language people use to sue ghosts. She accused me in interviews, because now, of course, journalists called, of being jealous, manipulative, of setting a trap. Her words were sharp, carefully filed, but they fell on a crowd that had already seen the papers. Her voice sounded hollow. People, though, have short attention spans. The outrage cycle flips quickly like cards. But here's something I learned watching the arc unwind. Consequences don't vanish because attention moves elsewhere. They play out in rooms where the lights are dim and the shelf is right there to see. One afternoon, a package arrived at my door. I was in pajamas, half awake with a pen in my hand when the courier left the white box at my doormat. No return address. Inside, a thick stack of printouts, business cards, text screenshots, email threads, evidence. From the very person who had sent me the original screenshots months earlier, an ex-colleague of Leia's who couldn't stomach lying for her anymore. The note was a single line. "You did what you had to." I didn't. Thank you. Gratitude is strange in revenge. It feels hollow and holy at once. I wrote back a small, clumsy thank you, and then I burned the note in the sink. Ritual, not for drama, but to mark the moment. I had the proof because people make decisions about ethics at different times. Some never, some later, some immediately. The ex-colleague had chosen later. That was enough. When Leia's PR person tried to orchestrate a comeback, an interview about lessons learned and moving forward, no one believed it. Her voice had turned performative. She had tried to weaponize charm and prose and felt entitled to mercy because she had rehearsed remorse. But not every apology can be performed on cue like a monologue. Some must be earned. Months passed with a slow, weathering pace. I watched from a distance. My mother attempted to bridge the gap and failed. My father retreated into his old routines. It is easier to hammer down the shutters sometimes than to admit you were wrong. Friends rearranged themselves into new configurations, and old grievances were aired in small living rooms with wine and exhaled breath. At night, I sometimes dreamed of the ballroom, of the chandelier like a constellation tipping, of Leia's mascara running like a map of everything she'd been unwilling to feel. The dreams were less about revenge and more about reconciliation in a world that didn't allow it. I would wake with my mouth tasting like lemon and something like peace in my chest. Because what revenge had given me wasn't vindication. It had opened the door to a life that had been there all along, but had been muffled by my own acquiescence to small cruelties. I had done something sizable. I had refused to be small for any longer. And then, just as the aftermath started to flatten, a new twist arrived, quiet as a footstep on soft earth. Noah's company announced a new initiative, a fund for community housing and ethical partnering. Victoria made the announcement, and in the press release mentioned, standing up for what is right. That same week, news surfaced that Leia had been under investigation by her firm for expenses flagged as irregular. Client entertainment that matched nights out in hotel bars, invoices that didn't line up. A whisper turned into a rumor, and then into a memo from Human Resources requesting an immediate audit. Leia's professional house of cards, which she'd been building like a stage set, started to wobble. I sat with my hands wrapped around a mug, something warm and sensible, and felt none of the glee they sometimes promised revenge would give. It was more like quiet acknowledgement. The universe doesn't read a list of wrongs and pay them back. People do. People decide what they'll stand for, and sometimes, when enough people notice, the world rearranges. A week later, Leia left town. Not run, exactly, but withdrawn. The pictures of her moving forward faded into a grid of an absent life. Noah finalized his divorce cleanly. His mother avoided family functions and textual correspondence with the tenderness of someone who had learned consequence the hard way. My parents kept to their house with the awkwardness of people who had to rearrange their moral furniture. I received a call from an old teacher, Ms. Rowe, who had put stickers on my papers and told me I had a quiet wisdom that would find its place someday. She wanted to take me to lunch to celebrate the rightness of truth, though she barely knew the details. We ate sandwiches on a park bench, and she told me about her garden. The small pleasures felt like contraband. I felt like a person who'd been given back a passport to herself. Weeks turned into a year, and the world outside rearranged itself slowly, as it always does. The river froze and then melted. Leaves came and went. People read new headlines and moved on. But I had done the thing I meant to do. I turned and walked away. Not in the flippant way people mean when they say, just walk away like it's easy. I turned, bag over my shoulder with a steady step, and put my energy into the things that built me back up. A job I loved, friends who had been waiting outside the noise, a small apartment filled with plants. One evening, a simple note arrived from my mother. A line of 3 sentences. I'm sorry, I wish I'd protected you. Will you come over this Sunday? No apology gives you everything. But apologies unfurled carefully sometimes stitch new seams. I went. We sat at the head of the same table where Leia's wedding cake had once been photographed, and my mother spoke in a voice that trembled around the edges of what had been. She told me how she had been afraid for decades of rocking the boat, of losing Leia to a version of herself she didn't understand. She confessed to choosing convenience over kin. When the words came, they were small acts of repair. I listened and let the small pieces land where they needed to. There is no neat repair for years of erasure, only new patterns if both parties are willing to stitch them. I can't promise the same past, my mother said, but I can promise to try to see you. That's enough, I said. Seeing is where it starts. We walked down to the river afterward and watched the gold of evening sink into the water. In my pocket, my phone vibrated another message. No, not from Leia, but from someone I'd mentored when I was younger, a woman who had ignored her own voice for years because she thought it inconvenient. She wrote, I finally told them no. It felt less like victory and more like the first sturdy step of a path. Thank you for showing me this was possible. And then a string of hearts. I pressed my palm to the cool railing and thought about what had been lost and what had been found. The scream in the ballroom had been a chord. It had opened something. It did not undo pain. It did not erase the ways I'd been quieted, but it had cracked the glass and let in air. If you ask me what revenge tasted like, I'll tell you the honest thing. It didn't taste like salt. It tasted like a clean plate, like the first cup of coffee you drink alone after leaving a party you were never meant to attend. It tasted like walking down a river path and realizing the weight on your shoulders was a story you didn't have to carry anymore. Leia, I stopped trying to fix her. The rest, I learned, was quiet, not cowardly. People change at their own pace or not at all. You cannot force the tide, but you can set your own sail. On a blustery morning a year after the wedding, I bought a plane ticket to Maine. I spent a week with my feet in sand that tasted like salt and old freedom. I wrote postcards to the few people in my life who mattered and taped them to the bathroom mirror like small altars. When I came home, the city smelled different. Maybe it was me. When I left the river that day, When I returned to my little apartment with its plants and its quiet, I understood something about the world and the people in it. Sometimes the most devastating truths are the ones that finally set you free. I am Ariel. I once sat outside a banquet by the garbage door, told I didn't count. I still remember the smell of lilies and bleach, the squeak of a folding chair, the sting of being told to be small. I also remember how it felt to leave and watch the world rearrange. Now, when the music starts and people look for who should be at the center, I don't aim to take their spot. I build a better room and I invite who wants to come. If you've ever been pushed out of your own space, know this. You don't have to wait until someone else falls to prove your worth. You can let truth be the small thing you place gently on the table. You can walk out and close the door behind you. The scream will echo, the quiet will come. And in that quiet, you will find what you've been missing all along, the right to be seen on your own terms.